Well, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Bob Carter. I'm the Vice President of Public Sector for Apptio. And this session is going to be about aligning resources to reduce mission risk with TBM in the public sector. We'll start the introductions to my right with Kobe Holloway from SAIC, and then we'll go through the set of questions we have around this topic. Well, thank you for coming.
Very good. Thanks, Bob. And for those of you who are on Eastern time like I am, thank you. Right? You guys are the survivors. So I'm Kobe Holloway. I'm the Vice President for IT Modernization at SAIC. It's a large federal systems integration company. My role is to help the government turn the corner, lay the digital foundation for moving to a bright and successful future for IT delivery on modern platforms.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name's John Crabtree. I'm with the Federal Reserve National IT Function. We effectively build and run all the infrastructure for the critical and non-critical systems throughout the FRS. I've been with the organization for a number of years, and my responsibility is financial planning as well as chargeback to the benefiting business lines. I'm responsible for chargeback, therefore this jacket you see is lined with Kevlar. I deal with very tense customers from time to time.
Yeah, I hear that. Hey everyone, my name is Ryan Woodward. I work for the Department of Veterans Affairs. I'm technically the director of the Franchise Fund and Budget Office. So what that means is within the larger VA Office of Information Technology, we have a smaller organization that runs, that doesn't get funding from Congress, runs on a fee-for-service, full cost recovery basis. And so we also run full chargeback. We sell IT infrastructure services back to the other VA administrations and in some cases other federal agencies. And so we're a smaller subset of the larger organization for which an award was received earlier by Willie Gaddis, our CFO. So it's the same organization, but VA is very large. And so there are a lot of different things happening.
Hi, I'm Mark Bland. I'm much skinnier in live, so just look at me in person, not on the screen. So I work with the FBI at the CJIS Division. That's the Criminal Justice Information Services Division in Clarksburg, West Virginia. Thank you.
Wow.
So FBI does a lot. Our division in particular, it's more outward services for the local law enforcement community. So I work a lot in budget creation, budget execution, and budget reporting.
Tamar Gerber from the FBI CIOs Division, and I'm wondering who yelled. We'll talk afterwards. That's awesome. I am in the IT management section of the CIOs Division, primarily responsible for leading a team of professionals who plan, execute, and manage and report on all the federal IT spend in support of the information services offered by the CIOs Division.
So Tim, we're going to start on your end and work our way back. How did you get involved in TBM and get involved in the journey, and what started you down this path?
Yeah, and obviously Mark and I are from the same organization. We thought we would win by numbers here, but so we'll kind of talk and tag team this together. For us, this really goes along a story of a couple years ago we went through a Safe Agile transformation. And it started us thinking more about value and value delivery and value alignment. And at the same time, our IT section manager was extremely interested, I think probably leading from that value thought about identifying an IT service model just for, again, optimization of IT service. The more we can optimize, the better we can deliver value and value alignment, just making sure that the organization understood how IT enabled those tremendous services that the CIOs Division offers. And so we saw OMB, Office of Management and Budget, pointing towards TBM from a federal IT reporting perspective. But we definitely like to say that we're not in TBM because of OMB. When they introduced us to it, but we quickly saw it as meeting our needs and what we were trying to accomplish with an IT service model and a value management framework. And so we've jumped in 2 feet, with TBM and with SAFE, and we're well positioned, obviously, to fulfill all the OMB requirements. But it's definitely kind of the icing on the cake for us. We really see a lot of tremendous value with TBM.
And so from a budget perspective, because he's IT, I didn't like him at first. 'Cause the budget and IT folks don't really get along. But he was really a champion for TBM. He was pushing it. And for us, we saw the transparency of it. So there was so much value in that. So because they were pushing it, championing it, we were on board, and we're really starting to see those benefits now of the TBM taxonomy and the transparency of it.
Yeah.
So I would say necessity is the mother of all innovation, and that was sort of what happened with us in VA. It seemed like everybody kind of woke up at once and realized that what we were doing was not really getting it done. We needed to get better at reporting our costs, figuring out the drivers of costs, and providing transparency to all of our stakeholders. If you think about an organization like a car, and the CIO or whatever executive you have in your organization is leading the organization, they're the driver of the automobile. So when they sit down, if you think back 5 years maybe, our executive in charge would sit down in the driver's seat, get behind the wheel and look at the dash and see basically nothing. There's no controls telling them how fast they're going or whether they're almost out of gas or anything like that. And so TBM is sort of a way to improve the data that's available to our decision makers. And so now they can see a much more detailed and granular view of what's happening in the organization. 5 years ago, maybe it was even like in the old days, I don't know if they still do this, but back in the 80s in school, they would try to show people how bad it was to drink and drive, and you would wear these goggles. You put these goggles on and ride a tricycle or something, and everyone would fall over. I think maybe 5 years ago, it was sort of like that. You know, if we got some sort of data call from Congress and they said, well, how much are you spending on a certain application? It was like open the massive budget spreadsheet and hit Control F and search for a keyword for that application. I think we all woke up at some point. It seemed like a mass awakening. We realized that wasn't getting it done. But it's also sort of like upgrading to a new car. So really back before TBM, we did have some things on the dashboard. You know, we had some very basic cost information available, like cost by budget object code, cost centers, congressional project maybe. But so when you upgrade to a new car these days, you get a lot more fancy sort of gauges and dials on your dashboard. You know, now it tells you whether your tire pressure is where it's supposed to be, whether your airbags are working, how many miles you have till you're out of gas, the speed limit. So that's really what TBM did for us. It increases our visibility into our IT spend, makes the data that's available to our executives much more granular so they can steer the organization in the right direction.
When I first got involved in the financial planning side, prior to that I was on the operations side where I was a consumer of IT services. I came over and I would lament that while accountants have GAAP, standard accounting principles, when it comes to cost accounting, it's like the Wild West. We had and still have a cost accounting model in place that while it's highly accurate, it's also highly complex. And with that greater complexity, we found and we knew that we had lost all traceability between the customer who's consuming the service and our investments. I think one of the best value propositions of TBM compared with the way our current model worked is the vertical direction of the costs. Rather than moving costs horizontally, which we would do to try to get the costs slotted in just the right area, moving them vertically, we maintain that traceability from consumption all the way back to our initial investments and the consumption that drives those investments.
So, you know, my role is a little bit different than you guys. You know, our organization is to help the government transform, right? So we're your partners on that transformation journey a lot of times. So structured transformation is a thing that SAIC delivers, and you know that's a broad scope. But what we discovered a few years ago with the big push towards TBM was that's a big enabler for transformation. Mm-hmm. So one of the big challenges that the government faces in any transformation initiative is, you know, the bulk of the major systems, most of the allocated funds go to O&M. You know, there's not a lot of money available for new starts, DME, right? Improvements in the systems, new features, enhancements. Certainly not wholesale transformation to new platforms. So TBM gives us a mechanism to both create a little bit of, you know, gap in in the budget so that we can have some money to work with the customers, but also it gives us the ability to communicate the value of the transformation preemptively in language that that the line of business owners understand. So TBM is a major enabler for us in terms of enabling broader integrated transformation activity.
Got it. Okay. So Tim, about the standard like this and people get involved in something new, how does adoption go at the FBI, and the sort of cultural adoption and behaviors? Was there a lot of resistance? Were they on board? How did it all come together?
Our section chief likes to talk about one time remodeling his house, and he just wanted to do a bathroom, and then that's right beside the kitchen, so we might as well do the kitchen, and then that's right, we got to do the front. So we were going through multiple transformations at the same time right now, which was I think challenging, but also probably positive in some senses, because we were disrupting the organization quite a bit. And the thing that we're finding that has both helped us and probably been a challenge for us is these core principles that TBM is founded on, things like transparency, value alignment, all those core principles are preached and safe for us as well. And so we were trying to focus on those transformative key foundation core belief systems that really drive a TBM taxonomy. And I'll say, and I've said it multiple times, the areas we've fell down, the areas we've struggled has been not with the taxonomy itself, whether it's defined, it's understandable, there's lots of definition, it's standard. It's failure to adhere to those core beliefs of transparency and collaboration, and so that's always our challenge. It's always our challenge in any transformation that we're going through. But with TBM, it was really no different. I will say, there's a reason why Mark and I are both here. The collaboration that IT and finance has, it was kind of always, it was there, but it's grown because of same sheet of music, talking with we've given them better data than they've ever had, and to inform executives to make better decisions. So the more that we do that, I think it's helped us in our transformation to TBM. They were really pretty receptive. The organization was receptive in understanding it, because I think it produced better data. It produced better information for them, better clarity. Everyone was talking, again, the same sheet of music. We have the same taxonomy underneath every single one of our value streams. And so we have we have a lot of consistency. There's still people that struggle with it, but again, focusing on this core transparency, value, focusing on those things has been extremely helpful for us.
And I will say that we had, and before we had a pretty robust system when it came to budget development, but this year was the first year that we kind of implemented that taxonomy. And the paradigm shift, it was funny because once you show that to people and once you start walking executives through that budget and showing from the cost pools up, going through the taxonomy, and they see the value of it, it's almost like you could tell the story better. Yeah. So once we were doing that, you could almost see kind of light bulbs going off, like, wow, like we're getting the story in a light that we never got it before. So I think as an organization, we saw the paradigm shift of, oh, it's something new, to, wow, we see a lot of value and a lot of transparency now in our data. And I think going forward, and coming up in the next budget cycle for 21, I think we're going to be able to compare those two fiscal years. And I think it's going to drive better conversation, better communication, and better decisions. So.
And if I could just make one more statement real quick. Relentless improvement, continuous improvement that is preached in TBM. I think our executives and our business leaders saw us wanting to improve and drive improvement into the organization. It wasn't just an IT thing. It really was a business, as they've been talking about. IT is a part of that business collaboration. Again, SAFE's really preaching that as well. But they saw us wanting to improve, and so definitely I think help with reception.
And improving together, like finance and IT going at it at the same time. I think that was a big thing because we were both on board with it. And I think because of that, it was more, they accepted it more.
Yeah, I'll second most of what they said. The adoption has been relatively smooth for us, and it's sort of been welcomed with open arms. I think there's a real hunger for improved data, especially by IT executives. managing a sprawling IT infrastructure and a very large multi-billion-dollar budget that's serving a very complex mission. You need better tools to be able to try to manage that. And so as far as adoption and willingness to adopt, it's one of the initiatives that I've seen that's been most openly embraced by pretty much everybody in the organization. And the implementation has greatly increased collaboration for us. There's, of course, a lot of value in the end state, which is greater transparency and everything else that comes with TBM, but just the process of implementing an IT financial management solution and TBM itself caused all of our different business office groups, IT groups, headquarters, field offices, everyone to get together and talk through what we were all doing. And so in a lot of cases, it was the first time that all of us got together and learned what everybody else was doing. And so we started to learn about how what we were doing was impacting other parts of the organization, how decisions in one area impacted costs in another, how processes in one area were fed by processes in some other place where you had no idea. So just the implementation of the IT financial management solution and TBM in general and VA has greatly improved collaboration, I would say.
Yeah, when I look back over the past 3 years, we were pushing the business line, IT service provider, to move to the TBM framework, and it was like pushing a cart with a string. They weren't against it, but it was not a priority. They had other things to do, and I can understand that. Fast forward to recently, we had a COO come in. COO brings in some consultants. And what do consultants do? They tell you what you already know you should do, but it's a consultant said it. So the consultants go back to the COO and say, you need to be in this framework, this TBM framework. They turn around, hey, finance, you got to help us get there. This is a great idea. Yes, it is. We will help you do it. And so that has really given us headwind right now for the next phase and taking our current allocation model and moving it more to the TBM framework end to end.
Yeah, so I'd love to hear the perspectives from my colleagues in government, because one of the things we have really observed that TBM creates is it's not just a challenge related to the financial management systems and the governance of cost associated with IT, but it's the organizational change and cultural change required for any big transformation initiative. So one of the coolest things about TBM is when you go through that process, you see, I think you made the point a second ago, that different parts of the organization begin to talk in a common language and begin to understand each other's equities. And it creates a framework for a much broader transformation conversation that leads to a different cultural dynamic across the organization, driven by the finance conversation, which is kind of where everything really gets decided ultimately. So that's both the biggest challenge and the biggest benefit I think that we've seen with our customers by adopting TBM is giving us the groundwork for real cultural change and a framework for organizational change management.
Great. And I'll open this to anyone. Were there any quick wins or outcomes or cost avoidance that popped up along your journey that you could talk to in any way?
I think for quick wins, for us, it was really good conversation. So when we sat down for budget creation, it was good. In the past, people would say, well, let's cut this. It was really good to be able to kind of follow them through that taxonomy up through the value stream and really see what type of system that was going to be impacting. I think for a win, it was really, for us, it was when we had those conversations, we were able to kind of map them. And instead of saying, hey, we're going to take 10% cut over here, we were really able to see what systems we had were going to be impacted by it. So for us, that was a big win for budget. And it was really the first time we started seeing like, wow, we're all talking the same page. This is really good communication. So that's my perspective of it.
And I think we definitely found duplication. We found cost duplication just by, again, as I was mentioning, we have that consistent taxonomy underneath every single one of our value streams now, including all of our shared services. And so we saw duplication of product. We saw duplication of cost that we were able to identify and highlight.
And they tried to keep it, but that wasn't going to happen.
And no, we did not. We were transparent. But I mean, I think that definitely we found some duplication of costs that really helped us.
One of the biggest quick wins for us was related to modernizing our invoicing processes. So like I said, we operate out of a franchise fund, which is very similar to a working capital fund. And so we have to bill our customers for the use of our services every month. And so before the implementation of an IT financial management solution, we had a very manual, labor-intensive, error-prone process that resulted in a large PDF invoice being sent via email to our customers. And I'm fairly certain that most of them had never even read that document or knew what it was. So it wasn't that useful to the enterprise, and it was just something that was just ripe for a quick win. And so we implemented an IT financial management solution, the Bill of IT module, actually. And so now our invoices go out each month via, the notification goes out via email, but customers receive a link, and they click the link, and they go into a system, and they look at the details of their charges that are presented in a usable format. They can export the data in any way they want. And so we have all sorts of different consumers of the data now that we didn't even know existed. We have, IT project managers, applications, sustainment managers, finance people. Everybody's wanting to see this data. And so what they're looking at is a cost for all of their applications that we're running for them on our IT infrastructure, the total cost for those, and then the breakout of all of the services that go into that application. So for application X, it costs this much for the entire year, and then below that, it costs this much for storage, this much for compute, this much for network, et cetera. And the value of that information is just immediately apparent to anyone who looks at it and has anything to do with IT. And so transforming our invoicing process was a quick win, and it's still paying huge dividends for us. It was a relatively quick and painless change that has paid off big time for us. And we're seeing many different areas of the organization using the data to trend costs over time and have a greater understanding of what they're being billed for, and costs are being optimized, and they're using that data to compare to what they're getting quoted for going to the cloud or something else, and it's just very useful information.
I would say probably two wins. Operationally, when we first started using our TBM tool, we were able to take our chargeback processing from several weeks down to a matter of days. Remember, I said it was very complex. The other piece of it is when we had our new COO come in, he said, look, I need to develop a platform strategy. And he sketched out some things that he had done in a prior organization, and he said it was all spreadsheet driven. I know it took a long time, it took months. We were able to turn that around in a matter of a day or two and say, look, this is what we have, this is what you can use as your baseline. And his words, he said, oh my gosh, this is unbelievable. You folks are light years ahead of where I was in my prior career.
Yeah, so two examples come to mind. At the state level, we help one of our customers implement a comprehensive IT financial management systems reform over the last few years. TBM is the core framework for that. One of the things that it helped us with very early was being able to justify an investment in AI and natural language processing technology for the service desk. So that prior to implementing the initial framework, we didn't have a language to discuss the value of that service from a financial perspective. So once we were able to characterize that investment in the TBM context, the value proposition was very clear, and we were able to get that investment move forward very quickly. And then after that, we were very quickly able to characterize the value of that investment, and then that created momentum for other ideas and innovations that we wanted to bring into the environment. So that's one. The second is, anybody ever seen an Amazon Web Services invoice? Right. Looks like a phone bill from the 70s. So I think John made the point, that being able to quickly consolidate and communicate the costs associated with the 27 cloud service providers that this particular customer had in their environment was incredibly valuable in being able to help them figure out what they did and didn't need and where their money was going.
That's good.
So on that note, we will shift a little bit to the cloud, and I'm curious, I saw one of the sessions earlier today, and I was intrigued by the fact that now the money is in front of procurement, just because of the dynamics of the cloud and people are consuming resources and such. Has anyone sort of thought about the public sector world, and is it ready for the cloud in that respect, and how do you procure and consume resources and then ultimately manage it through TBM? Are you guys considering that as part of your current implementations?
Yeah, we are. the CIOs division is making a big push to send a lot of our services to the cloud. In fact, one of our largest value streams, the next generation identification service, which has things like 10-print identification, latent biometric identification, facial recognition, surface searches, those kind of things, is already out in the cloud. Everything except for face. But there was a lot of conversation on who's able to purchase RIs or to spin up resources on demand. And a lot of conversations of, we have our value streams, our trains are made up of contractor and FBI resources. And so a lot of conversation about contractors spinning up resources that are helping us drive that transformation. So we still definitely have a planning process in front of buying any kind of reserved instance, or the on-demand stuff is a little bit more flexible. But we definitely have we've tried to handle it with some process, a lean process as much as possible. So in fact, I have an employee that handles the working of each value stream. What is the need? And he actually purchases those RIs. So we are still going through a procurement shop, but it's definitely in a more lean fashion, to where it's interactive with the value streams. They set up rules on obviously on-demand resources and spinning up assets when they need it for response times or for workload requirements. But we work collaboratively with them to understand that and to optimize that as much as possible.
The VA is also going through a transformation related to cloud. There's a big effort underway to migrate from on-prem infrastructure to the cloud. And so there are all sorts of changes that the agency has to grapple with in that situation. One of them, of course, is trying to find the funding to pay for the things that are in the cloud. So you have a finite budget. Congress typically isn't giving agencies a bunch of new money to fund stuff in the cloud, and so you're running your on-prem infrastructure while still migrating things to the cloud. And so you have to find a way to shift from legacy O&M spending to, which is basically for us, transformation spending in the cloud. And so that's tricky, but we are finding ways. We're using TBM, using the data that's coming out of the cloud through our IT financial management system to analyze the charges and figure out how we can most effectively decide which applications move to the cloud, so that the most funding will be freed to shift to the cloud. Some things that we're looking at is, for example, migrating applications from physical servers first, because of course that's a bigger cost savings to the agency than migrating something from a virtualized hosting infrastructure like VM. We have a big VM farm, of course, as everybody does. So trying to find things that are hosted on a physical server is one way to help us shift funding to the cloud. And then there's the bigger question that everybody's kind of grappling with, which I think is the need to change business processes. So a lot of the presentations here talked about a new procurement model where it's driven by engineers, and decisions are made sort of out of the purview of finance. People are making decisions related to what's being consumed in the cloud outside of the normal approval channels. And so, we run, right now we run VA's largest data centers, so we run a lot of the on-prem infrastructure for VA. And there's a fairly bureaucratic process for requesting a new server or asking for more storage or something like that. It's slow and cumbersome. That's not going to work in the cloud. So we have to figure out how to change. We're still working through some of those things. Some of it's going to be less control. Some of it's going to be building internal controls to monitor what's going on without having all of these bureaucratic stopping points and approvals in place. And part of it is using an IT financial management system and TBM to analyze the charges that are coming out of the cloud. Because what we're seeing is that you can watch those, for a specific application, you can watch the charges trend over time. And if you see a blip in the trend, you dig in and find out why. And that helps you figure out what's driving those costs, who's making those decisions, and what sort of guardrails you can put around that process without slowing it down too much, while also not becoming an ADA violator or something like that.
Yeah, that's a great point. I'll key off that similar situation. We've developed a multi-year cloud strategy, and the end game will be we'll have hybrids, and we'll have applications that are running strictly on the cloud and still some on-prem. And I remember a conversation with one of our major business lines who support a lot of depository institutions. We were walking them through the cloud model, and they came to realize very quickly that when they could stand up workloads, and those workloads would be directly billed to them, and they said, but we don't go through you. So they're accustomed to coming after me if they suddenly see costs spike as you described. And we said, no, I mean, you're really putting this in the developer's hands if you don't have the proper guardrails, to use your term. So part of our cloud strategy is establishing those guardrails and looking at tools and processes to ensure that we provide those capabilities and flexibility, but we have monitoring and constraints on that consumption from the cloud.
I agree with that. The answer isn't trying to recreate the slow bureaucracy with the cloud. We have to evolve, and we have to get better.
Yeah.
So guardrails, I think, are internal controls, guardrails, knowing how to monitor the situation without impeding speed are going to be crucial for the future.
So a model that we've seen get a lot of traction is service brokerage, if you guys are familiar with that construct. But basically it marries ITFM, ITSM, cloud brokerage, multi-cloud provider management under a single automation framework with the supplier side management. So when you decouple the capacity from the consumption, you create an abstraction layer for the buyer, right? So managed services is a great model to kind of avoid some of the difficulty around fluctuating operational expenses monthly associated with cloud consumption. So a multi-source integration style contract where there are multiple towers that are responsible for different elements of the IT supply, integrated by a master services contract that owns the brokerage platform, that has the ITFM, ITSM platforms integrated very well with those suppliers. That's a model we've seen help get past some of the confusion and difficulty of moving to a variable consumption model that cloud kind of forces you into. Another thing that seems to work really well is when you do things like aggressive capacity pre-buys. So you have a fixed capacity quantity for a period of time on the back end, and that levels that variability in the consumption that seems to mess with the financial side of the house, right? So that's another tool in the toolkit. But yeah, we're seeing, obviously massive cloud adoption. It's all multi-cloud. It's SaaS, PaaS, and IaaS at all levels. And again, having a framework that manages all of that holistically, so it's a single consumption experience, regardless of what the underpinning cloud supplier vendor is. That seems to work best.
So let's talk a little bit about the future. Just a couple notes for the folks in the audience. I think there was a note that went out on the app that the next TBM conference is going to be in Austin. So that was exciting to see that. There is going to be a public sector session in Washington, D.C. on March 25th. So look for news regarding that. We had a good session this past spring in D.C. and there's a lot of good content as we continue to grow this community and learn from one another what's going on. So on that note, what do you see going on in the future in this space? Again, a session earlier today, they talked about the combination of FinOps and TBM and sort of combining that paradigm of, I've got my baseline infrastructure costs, now all of a sudden the world's becoming more real time with the cloud, and then you dovetail on top of that agile. So these things are sort of merging together. What are your general thoughts around that and thoughts about managing this sort of quickly changing world, even for public sector?
Yeah, I think it was funny. We were talking, I think we were doing some level of FinOps without even realizing it was called FinOps, to be honest with you. But for us, the CGIS mission is providing information to our local, federal, state, tribal law enforcement partners and the IC community to protect the public and maintain civil liberties. That's the CGIS mission. And so we have critical systems like NGI, like I was talking about, where you're talking about TIN print identification. We have systems like the NCIC system, which is if you've ever been pulled over by a cop, that we're providing information to our law enforcement partners who come up behind a car and they don't know who's in that car, if there's wants and warrants or what it is. The NIC system, the Brady Bill system, before a firearm can be transferred legally, they have to go through a background check at the FBI CGIS division. So For us, it's funny because it's all about this concept of value. And like I said earlier, I think we've thought about value, but I don't know if we've ever focused on value as much as we have with SAFE and with TBM both. And so from a TBM perspective, we truly are realizing that every dollar we can optimize. I mean, we're not talking about bottom line profit return type stuff, but we're talking about every dollar we can optimize is a dollar of value we can deliver to our law enforcement partners that could legitimately save a life. And so we really appreciate that from an Agile perspective and from a TBM perspective. Mr. Leffingwell at the SAFE Summit, gave us a shout out that we were there, and he was saying, these are the types of, don't you love it when government's here trying to learn how to build better software systems faster? I mean, these are the people that should be doing it. And that really resonated with us. So, I mean, for us, I think it's about value. It's about how can we enhance our value to fulfill that mission so that we are providing the right information to the right people to protect the public. And so, we're really excited about what TBM is enabling us to do with transparency and value alignment to fulfill that mission. So for us in the future, it's just, continuously improve, relentless improvement, continuous improvement, get better, run the IT like a business has not always resonated in the government space, but that mindset is changing, and it's got to change. Budgets are shrinking in scenarios, and so we are having to do more with less in certain scenarios. And so these two frameworks, especially TBM, is enabling us to do better value delivery.
I like what you said too about, we're not getting any more money. For us, it's the same thing. I mean, what we do is we do really critical stuff for the citizens, and really you think that you go and portray that and you're going to get more money or more resources, and a lot of times it doesn't happen. So for us in the future, it's what you just said, and kind of using TBM to free up more resources, not to save money, not to really go back and invest in systems that we know that we're not getting more money for. So in the future, that's what you just said. I just agree. We're just going to leverage TBM to probably do more of that.
I think the future is just about rapidly changing environments. Right now, we've got migrations to the cloud, DevOps, Agile, SAFE. That's going to keep accelerating. It's never going to stabilize. We have got to change. So for us, it's about changing our mindset. We're never, there's no reason to yearn for the days of past where things were slower. It's never coming back. We have to change how we view our role in the organization. We have to get over ourselves. It's not about protecting empires. Like I said, we run the largest data centers in VA, so it's the legacy on-prem infrastructure. So sometimes there's a tendency to say, oh, the cloud is a threat, but we have to get over that. We have to get over ourselves, because the point of us being here, the reason we get paid and the reason that we exist in our current roles is to deliver value to veterans, for us, and the citizens of our country. And so TBM, the cloud, all of these new things that are helping us maximize our spend, be more efficient, are helping us deliver services more efficiently to veterans, and to inspire, hopefully, at the end of the day, inspire more confidence in the citizens of our country that we're using taxpayer dollars effectively, and that we're competent in executing the missions of these agencies. Yeah. So it's a huge opportunity, and honestly, I think everybody's very excited about it. Yeah. We saw in a presentation that there's a crisis credibility in institutions in our country. This is a big opportunity for us to change that narrative a little bit, and show that we are maximizing the spend, and we're delivering services more efficiently, and we're carrying out these very important missions of our agencies in a better manner. So it's a huge opportunity, but the future is just rapid change and letting go of things that maybe used to be important to you, and getting over yourself, basically, and finding a way to continuously change and adapt and be okay with that.
Yeah, a large part of our customer base, meaning the customers who consume our IT infrastructure, that they're what we call priced services. They have to recover all of their costs through their revenue. They have to compete on the outside private market just like anyone else, and if their pricing isn't competitive, they effectively go out of business. So that puts pressure on us. It seems like an overused term, but the term value is important. It's really allowing the customer to understand, okay, well, what's driving my costs? What can I do to change and reduce my costs? And what are you giving me for the services that you're charging? Couldn't do that in the past, but TBM does enable that.
So a few things come to mind in terms of futures, Bob. So one thing is, we've observed the transition of the decision-making authority for IT systems from the IT provider, CIO organizations, to the line of business owner, right? They have a much greater role and influence in deciding, where the IT dollars go. And part of that is the advent of low-code, no-code platforms, which really transition the heavy lifting to the experts in whatever the platform outcome is, right? Whether it's finances or human resources or supporting veterans and providing healthcare. These specialized SaaS platforms that are no-code, low-code have really changed the dynamic completely. So I think, our job in terms of providing IT financial management services is to reduce the friction to the line of business owners as much as possible in terms of access, and deliver them the best possible experience when getting to the platforms that they now need to do their jobs. It's a very different dynamic than in the past.
Great. I think we're going to open it up to questions now, the remainder of the time. And
any questions? Hey, my name is Charmaine Sear with the Department of State, and I have a question about, and this is for everyone on the panel, when you initially started, working towards a more service-based portfolio, what was the culture like, and how is it now within your departments?
Yeah, so I kind of touched on it a little bit. We were kind of already attacking the culture with our SAFE transformation. We started that in 2017. So we were kind of already trying to attack that culture of transparency and focus on value. So I think that helped. But I mean, we certainly, things like decentralized decision making obviously can be a shock to the FBI culture, and so we're still working through those things. But it's just trying to get the focus on the right place for us, and continuously driving that focus on the right place for us is extremely important. And that being what value are you delivering? That's not about this was my server now and I love this server. We're not hugging machines. We're trying to just trying to change the focus. So I would say culture changes last. I mean there really is that's going to take some slow change, but we're focusing in the right direction to bring about that change.
I've definitely seen a shift from sort of an IT-centric view of the world within IT to a services-based outlook. And there's been a lot of effort in VA, I know, and probably in everybody's organizations to change that shift to not view things in a myopic manner. And so we've done things like establish an account management office where we have a group that specifically talks to the business to figure out what they want from IT. And that's what gets done. It's not what pleases whoever works in IT, it's what the business needs to deliver services to our end customers, which are veterans in our case. And so it is a shift in mindset, and hopefully that's what you were getting at with your question, but it sort of changes the way you view what you're doing. You have to be providing value. You don't exist, you don't have a right to exist. You only exist to provide value to your customers. And if you're not doing that, you probably shouldn't be there. So that's a real shift in thinking, especially for government organizations. A lot of government organizations kind of in the past functioned in this inwardly focused manner. The bureaucracy, protected the bureaucracy and did what it wanted, but that's changed. We're focusing outward, really trying to operate more like I would call it more like a private sector organization that's really focused on customer service and customer satisfaction, and that's the main thing you need to worry about. Value streams are important, mapping value streams and figuring out what is actually delivering value to your end customers and knowing what is important and what isn't, and letting go of things that aren't important.
I'll just say quickly, and if you want to jumpstart action, you show information, you show data. That's how you get a response. Don't wait for it to be perfect. So that's one thing. And yeah. I tell folks, show back, charge back is not a end state. Show back itself is a process. It is an iterative process, and that is the real value, is going through that again and again and again between finance and the business line. That's where you get the most value out of the whole TBM framework.
Yeah, I'll switch gears for a second and talk about SAIC's own journey. So when we started down this path, we made a change from being an IT services provider to our internal organization to be an business outcome supporter. Right, that's a big philosophical and cultural shift, and from a design perspective, we now work backwards from the outcome, right? And that's changed the way that we deliver and design IT completely for the better.
I was going to add just one more thing. I mean, we work on teams that are quite a distance from the end user in a lot of ways, and so to the question, the leadership that we're trying to employ is trying to get people that are, miles away from that end user to understand what the mission really is. I mean, you can get lost in a cubicle pretty quickly, probably in all organizations, but especially I think in the government space. And so, I think TBM is demonstrating that value all the way through the taxonomy, cost pools, all the way up through our capabilities, where you can really see life impacts. And if they see themselves in that taxonomy as a part of that, I think that's hugely important. I mean, to your point, showing data, and as they're contributing to that data, it's helped us, I think, understand our place in the world, and the place in the CJIS world, and how that ultimately does impact, value delivery and mission. So I think that's been very helpful.
Great.
Yes, I have a question about disaster recovery. It seems like folks are talking about the opportunity to move from the data center to the cloud for disaster recovery. You have any recommendations for using TBM and these concepts to do something like that, or make the case for it?
I can talk about that briefly. So we've gone through a lot of exercises recently to use TBM to compare on-prem legacy infrastructure costs to what we're seeing coming out of the cloud, trying to make sure that we're getting the return on investment that we thought we would, but also trying to figure out, like I said earlier, the best applications to migrate first. And we found that so far, we're still kind of early in that analysis, but we found that the cloud is roughly 10% cheaper than on-prem right now. But even if our on-prem hosting or legacy infrastructure was somehow less expensive than AWS or Azure, when you consider the DR capability that you have in the cloud, it really changes that conversation. The DR capabilities that exist in the cloud are more than we could probably ever provide unless we received, a couple $100 million extra from Congress, which isn't going to happen. And so when you're analyzing on-prem and cloud costs, you do have to consider some things that aren't obviously apparent in the data you're seeing in TBM, the straight cost comparisons. I mean, so you have to find a way to try to quantify something like DR and compare it to what you currently have. I mean, right now we don't have anything that compares to a completely failover version of DR like you would have in the cloud.
Can I just share one more thing? Is there another question? I just wanted to share one more thing that I think would be helpful for the group, and we're running out of time, but and this is not related to any question, but the CJIS division, we have multiple fund types, and so we're not overly reliant on appropriated dollars, but obviously we have statutory limitations on how we use those fund types. And the transparency that TBM provided to us was tremendous, but it was also informative, and we had to be, and I mean that in a positive way, but also in the sense of, we had to be prepared and understand, not just in the past, I think we would have taken data that showed us, hey, you've got a direct dollar problem, and we would have maybe hit it, and not necessarily, but we just weren't ready we need to be prepared to turn the Titanic a little slower. But TBM provided us with a lot of data that showed us where we needed to go, but boy, we couldn't just turn in 2020 when we found the information. So just be prepared for that. If you are limited to the types of funds, we have 3, be prepared that TBM is going to show you a lot of information that you're going to have to take to the financial management organization and the organization as a whole and say, hey, this is where we're going. We need to be prepared for this. And again, that doesn't happen in an instant or in a fiscal year. So that was something that kind of shocked us with information. So just be prepared if you're really going to be willing to be transparent and show where the value is going, that you need to be prepared to take action.
Yeah, you might even find that you're not even supposed to, that's not your division's responsibility. So you run it through the taxonomy, you might be like, well, that's not really part of our mission.
Yeah.
We're doing work for somebody else. So you got to be, willing to have those hard conversations when you guys take
found that
this.
as well.
Yeah. That was a huge benefit for us to be able to kind of identify those things, because we as a division are looking at, what are we responsible for? And it's easy within a government organization to say, yeah, we'll do that work. We'll do it over here.
The budgets don't
Yeah, and budgets don't transfer that well. Yeah. So when you start running it through the taxonomy and it's not going anywhere, it's not going anywhere for a reason, because it's not part of your service catalog or mission statement.
Yeah. I just wanted to make sure we shared that nugget.
Probably one more question.
A question about the journey. When you're looking back on the journey that you've come, anything you wish you hadn't done or wish you had done, because it would have either slowed down the process or it's like a lesson learned. I wish I hadn't done that because it slowed me down, but now I'm here. Or I wish I had done that because it really would have helped me on the following steps, because you've given us real positive feedback on where you are, and just wondering from a repeatable, what we should look out for.
That's a really good question. I think what I wish we would have done, if we could go back 10 years from now, is start that relationship with IT. So if you're finance and you have an IT department, I think that's imperative. If you're going to be successful at TBM, you have to really have that relationship. So I would go back and just make phone calls, take him out to dinner. I mean, that's I'm trying to get him for the night, take him out to dinner. But I think really you do need that relationship with your IT, because what we found is finance people, I don't know everything in their world. So we really lean on them a lot. And that's probably been the best thing, is really be able to sit down, have conversations. And the taxonomy is great because the definitions are right there. They would be speaking a different language than what we were. So if I could provide any type of guidance and advice, is start that relationship now with your IT folks.
Good.
Well, I want to thank everyone on the panel today, but I also want to thank everyone who came this afternoon. The public sector entity, this space is rather fascinating. Just seeing a lot of the implementations of TBM over the last few years, it's fascinating to see sort of leaders emerge, younger folks sort of adopting the standard and taking control of it, understanding the data aspect and lighting things up, and the conviction that comes behind it, because it is sort of, you go through these ebbs and flows when you're going through TBM, when you're kind of saying, why are we doing this again? And then suddenly you get the data and you're showing insights and everyone's like, I get it. Now I know why we're doing this. And just an exciting opportunity that's taking place in public sector. And I'm glad everyone's able to come today, and thank you for everything you're doing in this space. Thank you, everyone.